now have a next panel discussion on imagining India's future with emerging technologies. The panel is going to discuss a very important question. Can India lead the world and be an example of how emerging technologies can be used for mankind? The panel will explore some very interesting directions around how government policies can be useful in establishing a framework that enables us to take technology to the ones who need it the most. There are a plethora of problems that can be alleviated with the help of AI. We will see them discuss how this can be done and how corporates can help aid that. To moderate this session, we have with us Ms. Suki Iyer, an independent not-for-profit professional, board member at Sampark Foundation. She's a co-convener of the digital inclusion vertical of FICCI's Creator 50. She has spent many decades across varied industries that include banking, IT, education, and leadership functions like profit center management, branding, social entrepreneurship. She's passionate about public policy, gender politics, economies, and social media, and the complex interplay between these that impact the world today. I take pleasure in introducing to you our panel members. Ms. Viji is an accomplished executive and leader with over a decade of experience. She has handled teams of 100 plus people and managed multi-million dollar budgets. She's a certified deep learning and machine learning practitioner who helps startups build innovative products and launch their computer vision projects. Vijay works at the intersection of AI, product management, technology, cloud platforms, business processes, global teams, research, and implementations, and is passionate about the power of AI for social impact. Saloni currently heads the Circle IT operations and business delivery for the 8 circles of West and East India for Vodafone. She has years of experience in not just the technology, but also how to leverage processes for businesses and individual users. She has managed teams of 150K individuals from application infrastructure, network, and security and data center. She has managed assets across circles, and I'm excited to have her here as a part of this panel. We also have Ms. Mrenjini Rajagopalan. She's a lawyer with almost a decade of experience in public policy and research. And her areas of interest include social, urban, and tech policy with a focus on themes relating to gender, social welfare, and data protection. She has been a legislative aide to and led research teams for members of parliament and has had a very close view on how tech and other policies are formulated. Rahul Sharma leads the public sector team at AWS India and South Asia to help the government agencies, public sector undertakings, education institutions, healthcare, and non-profit organizations adopt AWS cloud services. Rahul has had almost 25 years of experience of successfully running technology and consultancy business across India and Asia Pacific region. Rahul is an elected member of NASSCOM Executive Council and a member of the ITES Sector Skill Council. Besides all this, he's also passionate about how technology can be used to help secure a better future for young girls. And lastly, we have Nadia Manel. She is the Director of Investor Relations at Vitality, UAE's first female-focused business consultancy established to set up and accelerate female-led businesses in the region. Nadia holds a seat on the board of Women in Tech and focuses on growing and scaling the operations through chapter expansions and onboarding. Previously, Nadia held multiple director roles over 10 years at global B2B company Meltwater, and over these years, she has spent a lot of time in India working with startups and other organizations in the tech space. She has deep insights on how this ecosystem works and will bring an interesting outsider view to the table. Now I invite Ms. Suki to take over and start the panel discussion.
Thank you, Women in Tech core team, for making all the introductions and introducing the topic as well. And I'm delighted to be moderating what promises to be an interesting and a thought-provoking conversation today. So the topic today has actually some very interesting intersections, because the topic itself is a fairly gender agnostic topic, and in terms of emerging technologies and how well India can harness those. While the other part of it is really how well are Indian women equipped or limited in the path that they play in emerging technologies. We all have a good sense of what are cutting edge technologies. There's AI, there is blockchain, etc. And we also know that what is cutting edge today could very well not be cutting edge tomorrow. For example, if you think about something like UPI, which even 10 years ago wasn't there, but today is so ubiquitous and will help millions of people, with their making their lives much simpler. Down to something which is very industry specific. For example, how farmers are using radio based tags in their cows' ears to be able to tell on the health of cows. So we've really come a long way. However, when you look at how we are placed in technology worldwide, there was a recent report done by Global Finance where they sort of measured nations' technological prowess using some four metrics, and in that, India was like sort of way down 60 out of 67 countries. So, what I'd really like to discuss today is that when we're looking at emerging technologies, how do each of you think that India can play a role in on one end of the spectrum, making a difference in the life of the common man, and on the other end of the spectrum, sort of helping India, catapult into a leadership position out here. And I'd like to start with you, Viji, if you can share your views on this.
Sure, thank you, Suki. So when it comes to, and I'm going to talk specifically about AI because that's the role, that's the domain I'm specializing in. When it comes to AI, I think India has a unique, unique proposition to offer, really, because we are a multicultural society, multi-language society, and it provides it's a big challenge for a lot of AI technologies to deal with this. But if we are able to use AI effectively in India, we can be fairly sure that our AI models will work anywhere in the world, because language especially is going to be a big challenge that AI faces, especially being able to train models on multiple languages and for models to perform well in multiple languages. So there, I think if we can utilize what India has to offer, we will eventually. It'll be tough initially, but eventually we will come out much stronger in the long run. The other advantage that really India has to offer for AI is AI, as we all know, is highly label data driven. And getting the label data in a variety of domains is extremely difficult and time consuming. So, and since we have a large pool of cheaper labor actually compared to a lot of parts of the world, we can harness this pool of cheaper labor to label our data, which will then allow our models to be trained, and eventually this will help us take a leap ahead when it comes to AI, right? There are open data sets, but label data is where we can play a significant role. So that being said, we also have very unique challenges when it comes to India, right? So we want to be able to offer this technology at a very affordable level so that the masses can use it. So whether it comes to AI in agriculture or whether it comes to AI to really look at tackling some of the addictions that we have going on, AI for social good in general, then I think that we have a lot of real problems that we can solve in India. And if we are able to offer this technology, which can be used in multiple languages, in multiple cultures, in multiple regions of India, and which can be affordable, then I think we'll have a winning proposition. Not an easy problem, but I think we have a lot of potential.
Vijay, that's very interesting. Do you think you can give an example of how AI can be used to solve any one of many India's social problems, and maybe not just India but also worldwide?
Yeah, actually, I am working on an interesting project right now. So we are building a mobile app. So the startup is based out of UK, but we're building a mobile app for worldwide consumption. And coincidentally, the biggest market emerged to be India, actually. So the mobile app is to specifically tackle porn addiction, which is a real issue worldwide. It's an issue for people who are addicted, typically men. It really has a big impact on them, their families, their mental health, all of it. But also, as you're all aware, the porn industry is one of the biggest reasons why women children, no device tracking. So we are we're looking to tackle porn addiction using AI, and we've been pretty successful actually. So the app is called Remojo, and we have just launched an AI-based feature in it. And we're looking to tackle other addictions as well. It could be, gambling, it could be screen, it could be social media, gaming, a lot of it. And if we are successful, then this would have a big impact on the masses in India, which, surprising as I said, turned out to be one of the biggest markets for this app actually.
That's really awesome because it's sort of looking at a problem that most people know exist, but nobody's really looking at tackling it because there's just so many other problems to tackle. So the fact that you can use technology to look at something like this is really quite awesome, and also the different kinds of such problems that perhaps once this is successful, the same model can be replicated. It's quite something to really think about it. Thank you so much, Vijay. And one of the things that always occurs to me is when we talk about, even something like AI and any kind of technology, sort of the communications is really the backbone to this entire thing. We don't have that infrastructure. We really, there's very little you can do. I mean, even the conversation we're having today would not have been possible if we didn't have solid communication infrastructure. And Saloni, that's where I'd like you to come in because you've spent decades in this space and you have a lot of insight into what it was once upon a time and what it is right now, and it would be great for you to share your insights in this space.
Thank you, Suki. While we are talking about the emerging technology and how India can leverage this technology, as you rightly mentioned, that communication is the backbone for all the technologies which we are talking about, whether it's AI, IoT, or big data, whatever we are talking about. I strongly believe that there are a lot of things which needs to be done at the rural front, because in India we have 73% population which are at the rural versus 27% which are sitting at the urban side. And there is a lot of innovation in technological advancement which we need to do for the betterment of the life of a common man. See, we all know that we all are living in an exciting era of scientific and technological disruptions, and technology like AI, IoT, and big data have transformed the way we are living today. And if we can do something, to use the technology to make a farmer life better, because our 60% of the country's population is depending on our agriculture. But how do we do that? If we can leverage technology to create some of the better weather prediction system, or we can make some way to explore agriculture more resilient. So these are something wherein we can use AI or ML to use the clean energy, pollution control, solving the water scarcity, innovation. There are a lot of things which we should do to leverage this technology. As we rightly mentioned, communication is the backbone, and everything depends on the connectivity, the speed, and the latency, and especially while we're talking about the rural areas. So while we all know this pandemic, wherein every one of us are working online, and in fact in the education front also people are taking their classes online. But do you think that the way kids in urban area are taking Byju's classes or the classes which they are taking online, the same kind of facility a kid in the rural area is getting? No. Because they don't have that kind of infrastructure available at the rural end. So while we are talking about 5G and all, but how we are leveraging existing technology, which is 4G, that is also one question which we need to think about, because 5G will always open new opportunities for network operation, customer experience, and the new services for operators. And we are seeing that the telco role is changing, and that is to be visible for both a service provider as well as technology distributors. So we are talking to our government, our enterprise systems, and we are redesigning our sales strategy to allow customer to harness the power of 5G. And the way AI is increasingly, involved in our lives. And in telco also, we are taking a lot of data for the predictive analysis, and a lot of insightful information we are taking, and which is really improving our CSAT score. So after implementing the AI in chatbots, we can see 68% improvement in our customer satisfaction score.
Wow.
So that is, yeah, so that is something wherein, we are working at, but I think there is a lot of work which needs to be done to use this technology for developing India. I was in a panel discussion wherein one of my co-panelists was an entrepreneur for the startup, and she was talking about creating a solution using the AI to find the healthy and cancerous tissue on MRI and CT scan of patient with breast cancers. So how do we leverage those kind of technology in the healthcare? That is also something which we need to think about. We all have heard about the nanorobotics, wherein you inject something in a person's, blood, and then you get the statistics, vital statistics of a person, and the drug delivery. So things that the scope is really a broader scope, and communication is a backbone. With coming in 5G into the picture, there are a lot of things which India can do, and of course can create a leadership position somewhere in the world.
So one of the questions I had, Saloni, is when we talk about these technologies such as AI, etc., how I'm assuming that the communications backbone for those things need to be pretty solid. I mean, need to be sort of 5G, and you really can't maximize using these technologies if you don't have that infrastructure. Am I correct?
We have a huge team, working 24/7. Have our network operation centers where people are working 24/7. In terms of, we have all the technologies and tools, but there are teams who are working 24/7 to make sure that our network is uptime and our connectivity is there. Plus, we have our BCP solution also, wherein we can't afford that our network goes down, maybe in terms of a particular cell site also, because everything, and we, who else, other than us who are witnessed of this COVID situation, wherein, telecom has played a very, very important role. So, so that is always there.
Okay. So, this sort of also gets me to thinking about the role that governments have, in the policies with respect to technology and communication, etc. And Ranjini, that's what I wanted to sort of get you in, because you have a solid background in, policy and the government and tech. And if you could just share a little bit about what you understand about where we're going with this, how, what will possibly roll out, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Suki. So, in fact, when you started this panel discussion, I was about to tell you that when it comes to me, I'm going to have to pivot the topic a little bit, because I will not be able to talk about the technology. Rather, I'll be talking about an enabling framework that probably, brings the technology into the public domain and perhaps enables its use. Again, that comes from my interaction with technology at the intersection of policy, governance, and social good. So to sort of take over from where Saloni and Vijay were both talking about, if you're looking at it from the perspective of whether it's, it has an impact on common man, or in due deference to the panel discussion today, the common person, to keep it gender neutral, I would say yes, there's a lot of, potential to impact it. And does governance play a role in it? Absolutely. So I think for us, it's important to understand the current policy and tech governance landscape in India. I would say that of all the governance landscapes that we have in India, much of it is mired in, sort of policy lethargy and some sort of informational bias. But perhaps tech is one of the fastest, rolling out systems in India that we have right now. In fact, over the last 1 year, we've seen quite a lot of policies come out into the public domain, many of them with very strong implications. And almost all of them have some sort of social backing or some sort of, dependency on the social situation itself, such as you have, the Disha, which has been focused towards aggregating health data. You have, the social technology and innovation policy, which again has a very strong impact on emerging tech. There's an entire section on emerging tech, again, geared towards social inclusion, open data frameworks, education, research, and so on and so forth. Now, keeping that aside on one side and looking at where we are today, I would like to point out that a lot of states, keeping the center aside, a lot of states themselves have come out with policies and frameworks that are enabling of technology. Like, for instance, my home state of Kerala was one of the first, states to create an open data, big data framework, such as Corona Safe Network, where they were harnessing data provided by volunteers, data aggregated through, mobile and other sort of platforms, and trying to create an area where you could have all sorts of data sets available, where you could use predictive technology and AI to respond to people's needs and satisfy and provide succor to them. You had a lot of other data sets built into it, ones that could provide health data, ones that could provide counseling services, ones that could keep track of and even survey. So if you were to ask me about the internal technology sphere, I would definitely say we have contradictory data. You have surveillance data on one side, which it's pivoted towards social good. There's also the state of Telangana, for instance, one of the first, path-breaking, I would say, adopters of technology that's looking to turn the entire state, so to speak, into a sandbox by, leveraging technology. They've done some very interesting things like pilot projects with the World Economic Forum with drone technology. They're using, again, health data, predictive health data, and so on and so forth. So if you were to ask me about where we are with, the common person, I would say we have a lot to offer. We are at the right juncture, and we are definitely going forward with it. Now, I think the second part of your question, if I'm not wrong, was about, how do we take this forward to the global sphere? In the global sphere, I would say you have to look at the tech landscape in entirety. And I think we're at a very interesting juncture, in my personal opinion, because on one hand, you have the government very keen to leverage data for economical good, for commerce, for GDP, job growth. But on the other hand, you also have the government, interestingly, using data as a battlefield, in foreign policy, in national security. Now, I would argue that these are two, not mutually exclusive domains, rather mutually inclusive. Regardless of the merit of, the decisions that India has taken with respect to these things, I would still say that we have emerged as a very strong contender, not just to market, but also someone who can, sort of drive and channel and channel the data discourse. We definitely have to do that. I don't think it should take a disaster to bring forth the true potential of data. We should probably look at harnessing data, and we should also, I think, try to engender trust. Because I think that's the one thing that's lacking very much in the policy space. You have companies, you've sort of segregated them into foreign companies, Indian companies. You've come out with restrictive, sort of policy norms. And I think we should try and create a structure where we can come together, engender trust, have an open conversation, and sort of create an area where we could leverage technology for common good. So I think that's something that we could possibly show the world going forward, given how big a player we are in this discourse.
So that's a really, really interesting perspective, and it's a perfect sort of seg to Rahul, because that's really what he does. Like, Rahul, in your role, you're sort of working with your organization and how it interfaces with the public sector and figuring out how to harness that for the greater good of not just India, but also the people at large. And taking from what Mrenjini has said, and the very nicely laid out context, If you can share how you feel about these two ends of the perspective.
Sure, Sukhi. I think when I look at the points raised by Vijay and Mrenjini, I think there is a good sort of synergy with what we are trying to do as well. Our mission is to make a positive impact to the life of every citizen of India through an AWS engagement and using new technology. And that's the power of what this new technology can do. I believe that India in tech is the superpower and is going to be the superpower for tech for good. Which he mentioned, tech for social good. Rajni also mentioned the same. And I think that's the big opportunity that lies in front of us. Can we really make India the tech sandbox of the world for social problem? And that initiative has already started. When you think about the AI paper that Niti Aayog had raised in India, it talks about that India globally will stand for AI for social good. And I think that's a brilliant statement that the Indian government is making, and there's a vision around it. And as you take that, as you unwrap the layers around some of the work that the government wants to do, Saloni talked about agriculture and the impact that technology can have on agriculture. You think about healthcare, agriculture, you think about inclusion, smart cities, financial inclusion, you think about citizen services. Every area, there can be such a huge impact of new technology. And I believe that the government will spend more effort and energy on technology for social good than any other commercial enterprise in India, because that's the need of the hour. That's what the acceleration during the pandemic has shown us as well, that the government is looking to create new models of engagement using technology. I mean, India was home to the world's largest contact tracing app that was built in a matter of 2 weeks by a startup. And that 160 million people, working on that. When you think about telemedicine and how immediately the Indian government used eSanjeevani as a telemedicine platform to do thousands of telemedical medicine consultations online. That's just the tip of the iceberg in how tech is and will be used and is being used in India for social good. I think the key here is going to be to make sure that we create mechanisms. And Mrenjini mentioned the government of Telangana and Kerala, government of Maharashtra. There's so many governments that are fostering innovations with startups in India. Governments encouraging startups and innovation and research to come together. We are working with the Niti Aayog to create a cloud innovation center. And I think that's where the power of cloud really comes through, because machine learning was here 40 years ago. AI and machine learning were here 40 years ago. But the true democratization of availability of technology so that every student today, a school student, can do reinforced learning, that power has been brought forward by cloud. And I think that's the real democratizer of availability. One thing I just want to point out from a skills point of view, I think that battle that we have to fight in India for skills availability is something that we have to really focus on. That's the point I want to make. We did a report with Alpha Beta very recently where across 6-7 countries across Asia Pac, we did a study of digital skills. And we found that of the total workforce, India was contributing, or totally within these countries, India was contributing about 54% to the digital sort of efforts across. But in terms of the workforce engaged in India on digital skills, it was the lowest across all these countries, only 12%.
Wow.
And that shows the opportunity that we have, that only 12% of our workforce is today using digital. Even within that 12%, what we saw was deep skills were being used by 7 out of 10 of these workers, which shows the digital divide in skilling. So I think that's the big thing that we need to think about. How do you actually create mechanisms where you can really take skilling to the next level in India and create that environment of new technology availability for students and and startups and so on and so forth. So I think that's the big area that we would need to focus on.
Yeah. That's very interesting. And also, I mean, when you talk about startups, this whole thing about, and that's where I'd like you, Nadia, to come in, because you've been working in, and you have the outside view of all the things all of us have talked about India. And like Rahul, you said, we may have the technology, we have the policies, we may have all of that in place, but if we don't have the right skills, that's something we need to work on. And from your perspective, Nadia, how do you, having interacted with teams in India over the last almost a decade, you have a pretty close view on that, and please do share with us what your thoughts about that are.
Thanks, Vicky. I've really enjoyed the more in-depth view to from everybody, from AI to communications to policy to the startup ecosystem and what governments are doing in India. My backstory is, like you said, with an external view, so as an outsider, and more on an operational level. So having worked with a media intelligence company in the B2B SaaS space, as mentioned before, for 10 years, I worked very much as part of building out commercial sales teams, and now I'm working with female-led startups to help raise capital. And so my view is very much operational when it comes to working with teams and startups in India. And what I think India has established themselves established yourself so well is you're a hub for tech and talent, like absolutely incredible. It's unbeknown to any other, coming from a South African background, we have a lot to learn on the continent from India, how you guys have established yourself as that tech and talent hub. If you look at the recruitment patterns of the Indian landscape, looking at hiring patterns on a micro level can also give you good indications into the movement of companies and technologies, not just within India, but from a global trends perspective, because India is a market where a lot of other countries outsource their talent to, and they're hiring. So it's ripe for pattern managing when it comes to global trends and technology. So when you look at the hiring patterns of companies and external sources into the country, you can get a feel for what's hot and what's not. But when it comes to value, like 85% of outsourcing deals come from the US, which is interesting because the US is seen as the leader in technology and innovation, but they're outsourcing so much, 85% of that to where? To India. So it's really, really, I think that's something that can be done a little better, is positioning India as that higher level of tech innovation. Rahul was speaking about upskilling, not just focusing on India's admin and, admin based, call center based technology. That's not the way it is. Like I just said, America outsources all of its innovation, well, most of its innovation, to India. I'm going to get into trouble for saying that somehow. But so from an outsider's perspective, the tech and talent coming out of India has always, I've seen it over the last 10 years, been incredible. And I think what could be done better is facilitating that runway. I think government's policies and frameworks work a lot slower than what the tech and talent industry does. And I think that just needs to be opened up a little more, decentralized, and for the facilitation of that tech and talent to just continue launching, accelerating. Because as I said, working with the startups that I do, it's incredible, and I every time I get an inquiry from somebody in India to work with, it excites me to next level. So my view is very positive from an outsider perspective, but I do think that governments and policymakers can do a little bit more to facilitate that runway for and that decentralization. That's just a little bit from my part.
Thank you, Nadia. That sort of very nicely summed up this first part of our discussion. And I'm just going to very quickly move on to the second half, which is really the whole gender aspect of the whole thing. And I'm going to really actually start with you, Nadia, because you are. I mean, one of the things that we all know is that if you look at any big tech, and we look at all the Bill Gates and Jack Ma, all of these guys, all the big guys. If you think about, is there a woman in that space? There isn't. But you also look at why is that not happening? Because they're all VC funded, and they're only 2% of startups which are funded by which are run by women. How can we get more more startups, more more women who, and the fact is that actually, if you just look at India statistics, we have the percentage of women working in the space is actually higher than the US and other places, but yet when it comes to business or research, etc., we fall back. And I know that you're doing a lot of work in funding these organizations. So if you could just speak to a bit to the gender aspect of this whole thing, and then I'll take it on to the other panelists.
Sure. Thank you so much, Suki. So I focus on female-led business and female funding. Not it's first of all an opportunity because, like you said, less than 2% are funded, and it's statistically proven that female-led businesses do better. So from a revenue perspective, it just makes sense. But I don't think it's such the investors that look at the businesses are predominantly male. So that's the two things. We need more female investors to come forward and just start playing their hand. It doesn't need to be big ticket sizes, just start small. But that amount of investment gives somebody else a validation. Secondly, I lost my train of thought. But secondly, the pattern matching doesn't happen. So it's not that the male investors do not want to invest in the female entrepreneurs. It's that there's no pattern matching because women package their businesses differently. So I think and also there are enough female entrepreneurs. They just need to be more vocal. So I would highly recommend that more female investors come out and back female-led startups, but that also the female-led startups become a little bit louder about their numbers, about the opportunity, and package their businesses in a way that makes sense to a male investor. Not change their business, just package it, because women build businesses generally for the greater good. And if the government of India is wanting to facilitate that more, then start looking at female. It's just the awareness, I think. And despite this growth, it's also 80% of the labor force is male, and the 20% is only female. So it's natural, right? So I think the women just need to come out, be more vocal about their position, and confident about where they are. Because I see amazing businesses, and I work as hard as I can to get them funded. Women build for the community. So if the government starts focusing on female-led businesses, their mandate will naturally come about.
Yeah, thank you, Nadia. And Vijay, I wanted to also move from startup thing to somebody who's in this space as a woman. Has it made a difference? I mean, in both positive ways and maybe limiting ways. Would you share what you feel about that?
Sure. Thanks, Suki. So actually, Nadia brought up a good point, right, about in the earlier discussion about how it's so important that India is not seen just as the administrative or a developer skill set for really the startups that the US benefits out of. It's really unfortunate, and it's quite true that a lot of the startups I am working with currently are also in the Western world, whether it's in the UK or US, and typically I'm the only woman on the team as well. So it feels like in so many ways the barriers are pretty high. But actually, this is an opportunity, right? If we want to break free from this whole mindset that we are a bunch of coders, that's when, if we are able to break free, that's when we will start to build those world-class products ourselves. And it's so important to have diversity on teams, not just in terms of gender for sure, but also in terms of skill sets. So unfortunately, the tech industry is seen as just, very developer and operations focused. So the DevOps and developers is what rules. But actually, the tech industry very much needs designers. They need, project managers, product managers. They need ethicists, anthropologists, people who work, with actual humans, right? Because the technology can be really effective only when people use it. Otherwise, we will build technology that nobody uses, right? So, and that is where I feel women can bring in, make a big difference on these teams. And extremely important. And unfortunately, the tech world, really uses a lot of jargon and uses, puts up barriers for women to enter, right? They don't make it easy at all. So most women shy away from the tech world because it's all like mumbo jumbo for them, because they don't see how they fit into this tech world. How can they contribute? And actually, we absolutely need all those, diverse skill sets and diverse viewpoints to build great products. And it's a well-known fact that diverse teams build the most innovative products. It's just well known. But somehow, because the tech industry is so caught up with itself that we don't really welcome, people from all other diverse backgrounds and give them an, equal level playing field. We don't put them, at the table. They're seen as, external to the, the core discussion, which just doesn't help. So that's one part of the problem. And I think, Suki, you have a question there, or
No, I was just sort of keeping sort of time in mind. I want to pick up from what you said about and take it to Mrenjini, because you said this thing, but how do we break past this? I mean, is there something from a policy perspective that the government can do? How do we, as a country, get together? I mean, how does that work? I just wanted to get your view on that then.
Sure.
So I was just thanking Suki for the question and Vijay for your perspective. I think you just vocalized something that I've been thinking for a very long time, which is that you need the social sciences in the tech, right? Because at the end of the day, technology is a medium, and it depends on who's harnessing it and to what extent and to what purpose you're using it. And like you rightly said, any technology that exists in a human vacuum without somebody to sort of harness it and show a path is definitely a technology that is lacking. And I completely concur with you on the fact that we need inclusiveness, not just in gender, even though that's a very big thing, and that sort of is a reflection of our labor market and our labor, participation, female labor participation. But you also need, people from different academic backgrounds. You need people from different, from caste, gender, from sexual orientations, etc. What gives me hope right now is a twofold process. First is the presence of a policy like the Science, Technology, Innovation Policy, which interestingly enough has an entire chapter on inclusion. And it has some very, very, I would say, radical for a country like ours, which always is at the juncture between modernity and convention in some ways. They have an entire chapter there which talks about having women in tech. 30% of women must be, encouraged to be in that space. It also talks about having scientists from the LGBTQ community participate in their spousal benefits for them. It looks at differently abled people. And of course, it also talks about inclusion of different disciplines in this space. So I think that is a very encouraging sign as far as I'm concerned. Also, I would like to call upon, some of the other, I would say, schemes or policies of the Indian government, which tries to encourage the inclusion of women, not particularly in tech, but in the larger startup ecosystem. You have finance policies, etc., Mudra, startup policy. So all of these are great endeavors, but I would say we shouldn't stop at that, because of course, at the end of the day, when it comes down to data often shows that women aren't participating or breaking through as much as we want them to, and that many of the barriers are often social norms and biases. So clearly we are on the right path, but we could do a lot more.
Thanks, Mrenjini. And Rahul, I'm actually going to leave you for the last, and I'm going to get you up to Saloni because this is women in tech. Saloni, just very quickly, what have been your experiences from a gender perspective? I mean, has it made any difference at all, or just do share what your views are?
So, Kia, according to me, there are two things. One is technology, and one is technology in telecom. Okay, so telecom, everyone knows it's a very, very dynamic industry. Network is our backbone, okay, unlike other industries. So here the huge task force is from the technology. And when you're working in telecom, during the initial days, I've seen there is a lot of hesitation of having female in the technology department. People were not very open, because it was a very, very challenging situation at that time to work in the technology department. See, when you work in a telecom, you are working 24 by 7, and kind of you are handling the projects, you are handling the rollouts, you are handling from 2G to 3G, 3G to 4G, now 4G to 5G. So you are always up and running, and you are working with a live customer. So there are a lot of challenges in terms of any kind of migration activity you are doing, any kind of integration you are doing. So you are working on the live customer base. So there were challenges having female in the organization, and especially at the leadership position where you are having the head of the department, head of the technology. But what I feel that the kind of accelerated pace for the digital and cloud transformation, which is there now in the current scenario, it is giving women in technology, especially at the leadership position, an immense opportunity to turn the winds of change toward infinite possibilities by identifying strengths and gaps and harnessing the innovation opportunities. Today, there's a massive requirement, and Rahul also mentioned that we have a skill. We have a skill requirement with this new emerging technology. So there's a massive requirement for skill set, and it is not dependent of any gender. So a woman can also rise on the occasion and invest in self-learning and to be future ready. And this pandemic, which has redefined the possibility of remote working and re-emphasized the flexible working hours. All of these factors looking in the mind, it has created a positive momentum in technology.
Right.
And the future of that's the kind of opportunity women are getting, wherein a hybrid work model which we are having is a new normal, wherein a woman don't need to change the locations. They don't need to uproot their family and social circle. They can remain on the same location and working for a different location. So those kind of opportunities is there in front of women. So I feel that technology is giving a lot of opportunities for women, and we are seeing that the number of women employees in technology sector are growing. In fact, a younger women have a lot of role models who they can look up to. And so I believe having an innovative perspective and open-minded and a passion for continuous learning are really vital for our professional progressions. And with that, women stepping into the leadership roles, they are inspiring other women. So there are a lot of things to do.
Saloni, thanks so much. That's basically what you're saying is that actually it's more of a opportunity now with the way technology has changed, with the new normal, with COVID, etc. There are many more opportunities than there used to be in the past. And with that, I'm giving you the last word, Rahul, on your take on this and what you'd like to share.
Sure. Thanks so much, Saki. It's been amazing to hear everybody here. And I think on this one, I always feel that any successful business has to represent the diversity of the customer that they serve. And that's the most important thing. When I look at my mother, she could have been a big boardroom executive and she never had the opportunity. My mother-in-law is the most enterprising woman that I've ever seen, and she could have been running a unicorn if she really had the opportunity. And I think that's the key, the opportunity that we need to provide. When you look at the girl child and the amount of dropouts that happen within education in India with girls dropping out, it's an alarming situation that we have to be able to correct as soon as possible. Because no matter what we do in our businesses, no matter what metrics we drive around diversity, if we don't have the right talent of pipeline coming in, we'll never be able to be successful in this. And I think that's the most important thing that, my personal goal and mission is to see what can we do to drastically change the magnitude of what we're trying to do with the girl child and educating the girl child. I'll give you an example. We recently ran an AI machine learning hackathon only for women. It was on reinforced learning. And you won't believe the number of registrations that we got on that event is more than that kind of event anywhere in the world. And that's the kind of potential that we're looking at. We have a digital divide in India, with education. The girl child is the most affected by it. And if we could, my plea is that we need to do something really drastic there so that we can make sure that section, that skill base is not lost. And I think that's the last thing that I would say.
And that's a wonderful note to sort of finish on, because that's really what Women in Tech is all about, right? It is really about coming in and supporting STEM for girls, making sure this sort of pipeline of a from the perspective of the girl child to give and women to give them opportunities, and also from the perspective of the industry to be able to have access to the very diversified pool. And while this is only women, not necessarily just women, it could be everybody else. So yes, I mean that's absolutely important that while technologies are being developed, while infrastructure is happening, while startups can be funded, the key to all of this is really to make sure that the policies, the social norms, all of those sort of work together to be able to create this very vibrant set of people who A, have opportunities, and B, are available to actually contribute to the growth of both of India, across, whether it's to sort of looking at it from a leadership position, or even to do the things that we need to do, like Vijay said, for the Aam Janta, for the everyday common man. And I think with this, we're sort of up. Our time is up. Thank you so much for all the really interesting perspectives each one of you brought to the discussion. And I'm going to now give it over to the Women in Tech core team. Thank you so much.